The night of the wedding was supposed to be the most beautiful night of my life. Yet even as the last candle flame swayed in the decorated hall and the music faded into silence, I could feel something strange in the way my bride held my hand. She looked radiant, no doubt. The delicate white dress that flowed like a river of light around her slender figure made her appear like a vision sent from heaven itself. Her dark hair tumbling over her shoulders in soft curls, her eyes lined with kohl that glistened in the golden glow of lanterns. Every guest had admired her beauty, whispering that she was the most stunning bride they had ever seen. And I, the groom, the young man blessed with such a wife, should have been the happiest of all. But beneath her shy smile and gentle nods, there was a shadow, a silence deeper than modesty, an absence heavier than nervousness. As I led her into the bridal chamber, my heart thundered with excitement and devotion, but also with a gnawing worry that I could not explain. The room smelled of roses and sandalwood. The silk sheets were prepared, red petals scattered across them like drops of fire. She sat on the edge of the bed, her gaze lowered, her hands resting lightly on her lap, and when I knelt before her to lift her veil, I saw not joy, not the trembling anticipation of a new beginning, but a sorrow that threatened to break me before I had even touched her. She whispered my name, soft as a sigh, and though her lips formed it with care, her eyes seemed to drift far away, beyond the walls of that chamber, beyond me. I reached for her hand, kissed her fingers, promised her with every beat of my heart that she was my world, my forever, my everything. Yet even then I knew, somewhere deep within, that her heart had not arrived with her body, that she had walked into this marriage carrying a love that did not belong to me. And as the night unfolded, I would learn the truth that would change not only my wedding night, but the entire course of my life. My bride loved another man, and on the very night she became mine, she still belonged to him. When the chamber door closed behind us and the muffled laughter of cousins and friends faded into silence, it felt as though the world had shrunk into that single room, heavy with the perfume of roses and the unspoken expectations of a wedding night. I moved closer to her, eager but also gentle, knowing this was a moment when two souls were meant to merge into one. She lifted her face slowly, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw the spark of affection I had been longing for. But then it vanished, replaced by a faraway look, as if she were watching something only her heart could see. I spoke softly, reminding her that she was safe with me, that I would never hurt her, that her happiness was now my duty and my desire. She nodded, but her silence weighed heavier than any words. At last, she whispered something that froze me. "Forgive me, my heart is not empty. I try to bury it, but it beats for another." My chest tightened, the words striking like a blade, and I could barely breathe as I asked her what she meant. She trembled, her hands clutching the folds of her dress, her lips quivering as tears formed in her eyes. "I loved him before they chose you for me," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I loved him with everything I had, but my family, they said he was not worthy, that his name, his status, his world could not match ours. They forced me into this union, and I agreed because I could not fight them. But tonight when I am supposed to belong to you, I feel as though I am betraying him, betraying myself." My heart cracked, the night which had been a celebration turning into a battlefield between duty and love. I sat beside her, stunned, torn between anger and compassion, between the right of a husband and the sorrow of a man who realized he was never truly chosen. She wept quietly, her beauty made even more fragile by the tears that shimmered on her lashes. And in that moment, despite the wound her confession carved into me, I saw not betrayal but tragedy. She had married me, but her heart had never crossed the threshold of this chamber. It was still with him, the man who had captured her soul before I ever had the chance. And though every part of me wanted to claim her, to hold her as mine, I could not force a heart to change in a single night. The wedding night that should have bound us became instead the night that unveiled the cruelest truth. Love cannot be commanded, and my bride loved another man. The silence after her confession was not ordinary silence. It was the kind that presses against your chest until breathing itself feels like betrayal. I stared at her, at the fragile woman who was supposed to be my bride, the partner I had dreamed of holding close, and I realized how cruel destiny can be. I wanted to be angry, to raise my voice, to demand why she had agreed to this marriage if her heart belonged elsewhere. But as I looked into her trembling eyes, I saw not deception but sorrow, and my anger melted into something heavier. Pity, longing, and a love that had no place to rest. "Tell me about him," I whispered before I even knew why I asked. She blinked, startled, as though expecting me to scold her, to break the fragile air between us. Instead, I sat there, waiting, my heart bleeding yet strangely open. She lowered her gaze, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "He was not rich, not powerful," she said, her voice soft and far away. "But his soul was purer. He knew me before I became a bride, before ornaments and silks, before the world decided what I should be. He loved me as I was, not as I was expected to be. When I laughed, he laughed with me. When I cried, he held me without words. With him, I was not a daughter to be bargained, not a jewel to be displayed. I was simply myself." Her words cut deep, sharper than any blade, because I knew I could never erase his shadow. Yet at the same time, something in me ached to be that man for her, to earn even a fragment of the love she described. I took her hand then, not as a husband demanding rights, but as a man clinging to hope. "And what of me?" I asked, my voice raw. "Do you see nothing in me worth your heart?" She turned toward me slowly, her eyes shining with tears. "You are kind," she admitted. "You are gentle. Any woman would be blessed to call you hers. But the heart, it does not bend so easily. It has chosen already, and I am its prisoner." Her honesty was a dagger, yet it was also the only gift she could offer me that night. I realized that though her body sat beside me, though the world outside believed she was mine, I had not won her, not truly. And in that painful realization, a decision began to form within me. Would I fight to make her love me, risking to crush her spirit under duty, or would I set her free, even if it meant shattering my own life? The room around us, filled with roses and silk, no longer felt like a sanctuary but like a cage, and we were both its captives. Two souls bound in a union the heart refused to bless. That night, as the candles flickered low and the fragrance of roses grew heavier in the air, I sat with her hand still resting in mine, and the weight of choice pressed down on me more fiercely than ever before. A husband's right battle with a man's compassion. The vows I had spoken clashed with the unspoken truth, that vows mean nothing when the heart is elsewhere. I thought of the guests who had blessed us earlier that day, of the elders who had smiled with satisfaction, of the families who believed our union was perfect. None of them would ever imagine that on our wedding night, instead of passion and closeness, we sat like two strangers bound by invisible chains. My chest ached with the realization that I could claim her body, but I could never command her soul. And so I spoke, my voice firm yet gentle, trembling with honesty. "I will not take what is not freely given," I said, my thumb brushing the back of her hand. The candles burned low, their golden light trembling across the silk and roses as the groom's voice fills the quiet chamber. "I could hold you tonight, but I would always know you were somewhere else." His words hang in the air like truth carved from sorrow. The bride bows her head, tears sliding down her cheeks like falling glass. "You deserve better than this broken heart of mine," she whispers, her voice barely more than breath. He leans closer, not to claim but to promise. "Then let us not be enemies. If destiny forces marriage, I will fight to turn destiny into love." She finally lifts her gaze, eyes softening, not with passion, but with gratitude, the faintest spark of understanding shimmering between them beneath the fading candlelight. The groom, narrator a handsome young man, mid-20s, tall with broad shoulders, fair skin, neatly styled dark hair, wearing an elegant cream-colored sherwani with golden embroidery, expressive deep brown eyes filled with both strength and sorrow. The bride, a breathtakingly beautiful young woman, early 20s, graceful with long dark hair flowing in soft curls, big almond-shaped eyes lined with cold, delicate features, wearing a radiant white wedding dress embroidered with silver threads and red rose petals, her face torn between sorrow and longing. The lover, her first love, a strikingly handsome young man, late 20s, rugged char with tousled black hair and piercing eyes, tan skin, dressed in simple plain clothes, a faded cord and trousers that emphasize humility, yet his face glows with fiery passion and defiance. "You are kinder than I deserve," she murmured. "He would fight for me, too, but you fight differently. You fight with patience." A silence settled between us, not suffocating like before, but delicate, fragile, like the hush before dawn. We did not touch as lovers that night. We did not share the passion the world expected. Instead, we shared truth, painful and raw, and in that truth lay the possibility, however small, that love might one day grow where duty had planted us. The wedding night that could have broken us completely became, instead, the night we began to understand what kind of war love truly is, not always fire and desire, but sometimes endurance, sacrifice, and the courage to hope where hope should not exist. The days after our wedding night unfolded like a delicate masquerade, each moment woven with unspoken truths and carefully guarded silences. To the world, we were newlyweds, the perfect picture of harmony, walking together through the courtyard, sitting side by side at family meals, receiving blessings from neighbors who admire how radiant we looked together. But beneath the veil of appearances, I could feel the distance between us as surely as a river separating two shores. She spoke to me with kindness, yet her laughter never reached her eyes. When we shared meals in our private chambers, she would glance out the window more often than she looked at me, her mind wandering to places I could not follow. Early morning light filters through thin curtains, painting the chamber in hues of gold and rose. The bride sits by the window, her delicate fingers holding a worn, folded parchment, edges frayed, the ink faint but still alive with memory. Her thumb moves slowly over it, her expression soft, distant, haunted by a love that refuses to fade. Behind her, the groom stands quietly, half in shadow, watching with mixture of pain and restraint. In his hand, he holds fresh flowers, jasmine and marigold, dew still clinging to their petals. The air is heavy with silence, the scent of mourning and the quiet ache of love unreturned. The groom, calm but weary, dressed in a light linen robe, eyes filled with unspoken tenderness. The bride, draped in a pale peach shawl, her dark hair loose and slightly tousled, her face illuminated by dawn's soft light. Setting, intimate early morning room, petals scattered on the table, window open to a quiet courtyard. I listened when she spoke, even if her words were few, and when silence stretched between us, I filled it not with demands but with quiet presence. There were times, she noticed, her gaze lingering a little longer, her lips curving into a smile too small for others to see, but large enough for me to treasure. Yet, just as hope began to stir within me, I would hear the quiet sobs she tried to muffle in the stillness of night, and each tear reminded me that she loved another. The ache of it was unbearable, yet I did not leave her side. I told myself that love, true love, is not a battle of possession but of endurance, of proving day after day that I could be the man she needed, even if I had not been the man she had chosen. She, too, seemed torn, caught between the duty she could not escape and the longing she could not bury. And so our marriage became a fragile dance, a balance of unspoken grief and unacknowledged hope, a union suspended between what was and what might still be. Each day tested my heart, yet each day also deepened my resolve. If her love was a fortress, I would not storm its gates. I would wait patiently at its doors until the day they opened to me, or until I no longer had the strength to stand. It was in the third week after our wedding when the fragile balance we had created was shattered by fate's cruel hand. I remember the evening clearly. The sky painted in shades of violet and gold, the air thick with the scent of jasmine from a garden. We had just returned from visiting her parents, and for the first time I thought I saw a quiet peace in her eyes, as though my patience was beginning to ease the storm inside her. But then, as we entered the courtyard of our home, she froze. Her breath caught in her throat, and her fingers tightened around mine before slipping away completely. I followed her gaze, and my heart turned to stone. Standing at the gate, dressed in plain clothes, yet carrying himself with a confidence that spoke louder than wealth, was the man she had loved. His eyes found hers instantly, and in that single moment the world around us dissolved. I could feel the invisible bond between them, raw and undeniable, as if no time had passed, as if no vows had ever been spoken. My bride's lips parted, trembling, her entire body trembling with a mixture of joy and despair. "You!" she whispered, the word barely escaping her throat. He stepped forward, his eyes blazing not with hesitation, but with the fire of a man who had come to reclaim what had been stolen from him. "I had to see you," he said, his voice steady, piercing the heavy silence. "I could not let you vanish into a life that is not yours. I could not let them cage you." My chest burned with anger and fear, yet beneath it all was a hollow ache. I wanted to shout, to remind him she was my wife now, to drag her inside and close the doors forever. But I could not move, for her face betrayed everything. She had not stopped loving him. Her tears spilled freely, and though she did not run into his arms, the way her soul reached for him was clear enough to wound me deeper than any blade could. The man looked at me then, and for the first time our eyes locked. There was no malice in his gaze, only defiance, as though he was telling me without words, "You may have her by law, but her heart is mine." And in that silent exchange, I realized the war I had been fighting in patience, and hope was about to change. The past had returned, demanding what the present had taken, and I stood in the middle of the love that was never truly mine to claim. The wedding night's confession had been painful, but this moment, this living proof of her love for another, was unbearable. And yet, even as my world tilted, I did not speak. I watched as my bride trembled between us, caught between the man she loved and the man she had married, and I knew that whatever choice she made next would seal not only her fate, but mine as well. The courtyard fell into a silence, so sharp it could have shattered glass. My bride stood between us, her hands trembling, her veil slipping from her head, as if even the fabric could no longer hide the truth. The man she loved, her lost, forbidden lover, stood tall, unyielding, his chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of defiance, while I, her husband, stood with clenched fists, torn between rage and a fragile thread of dignity I still clung to. "Say something," I whispered, my voice raw, though I wasn't sure to whom I spoke, perhaps to her, perhaps to him, perhaps to the heavens themselves. She looked at me with eyes swollen from unshed tears, then turned to him, and in that turn my heart cracked once more. "Why are you here?" she asked him, her voice trembling with both love and fear. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because you are not his," he said fiercely. "Not truly. They gave you away like a prize to be won. But I know the truth. You are mine, and I am yours. No marriage can change what the heart has already chosen." His words burned me, each syllable a reminder of the cruel unfairness of love. Yet even as fury surged through me, a strange calm held me back. I wanted to strike him, to tear him away for the life I was desperately trying to build. But what good is victory if it leaves behind an empty shell of a woman? I turned to her then, my voice breaking. "Is this what you want?" I asked. "To leave me? To throw away everything to run to him? If your heart truly belongs to him, then say it now. I will not chain you. But if you stay, then you must stay not as a shadow, but as my wife." The air thickened, and time seemed to stand still. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing, the weight of two worlds crushing her. Her lover reached for her, but hesitated, as though my words had struck something deep within him. For a fleeting moment, I saw a conflict in his eyes, love for her, yes, but also the awareness of the vows she had spoken, however unwillingly. My bride finally dropped her hands, her face pale, her lips trembling as she looked between us. I don't know," she whispered. "My soul is with him, but my life is bound to you. I cannot tear myself in two, and yet I cannot deny either of you." Her confession was both a blade and a balm. At least she admitted the truth, but the truth only deepened the agony. I stepped back, my chest heaving, my heart bleeding into the silence. "Then the choice is yours," I said, my voice hoarse. "But remember, every choice has a cost. If you leave with him, you betray your vows. If you stay with me, you bury your heart. Either way, something will die tonight." And in that single excruciating moment, the future of all three of us hung suspended like a fragile flame in the wind, waiting for a decision to either snuff it out or let it burn. The courtyard held its breath as the last light of dusk faded into the velvet of night. Above us, stars began to pierce the sky, silent witnesses to the breaking of three hearts. She stood still, her tears glistening like those stars, her hands trembling as though they were holding the weight of an entire world. In front of her was a man who had claimed her soul. Beside her was a man who had given her his life. She closed her eyes, inhaling sharply, and in that moment I knew whatever she spoke next would carve itself into all our destinies. When she finally opened her mouth, her voice was steady but hollow, the voice of someone who had decided not out of desire but out of necessity. "I cannot go with you," she whispered to her lover. "Not because I do not love you, I do more than my own breath, but because this path has already been walked, these vows already spoken. If I run with you tonight, I will destroy not only his honor but my own. Love built on ruin cannot survive." Her lover staggered back as though struck, his hands clenching at his sides, his eyes burning with grief. "But they took you from me," he said hoarsely. "They stole our future. How can you live with him knowing your heart is mine?" She wiped her tears and shook her head slowly. "Because he has given me something you never did. Patience. He has stood by me, knowing my heart belonged elsewhere, and still he has been kind. That kind of devotion demands respect, even if it cannot yet demand love." She turned to me then, her face pale and exhausted. "I will not ask you to forgive me," she said softly. "I have wounded you beyond words. But if you still wish to try, if you still wish to build something with me, I will not run anymore. I will stay, and I will try to be yours, not because the world expects it, but because tonight I have seen the man you are." My throat tightened, my body trembling under the weight of her words. I looked at the man who had been her first love. His eyes were wet, but he stood tall, and in them I saw not hatred, but a quiet resignation. He understood what she had chosen. Perhaps he had known all along that the world would never allow their love to bloom. He stepped forward, bowed his head slightly, not to me, but to her, and without another word, he turned and walked away into the shadows, his silhouette swallowed by the night. The sound of his footsteps faded, leaving behind only the soft rustle of the jasmine vines and the uneven rhythm of our breathing. She crumpled to her knees, her face buried in her hands, and I moved to her slowly, unsure if I was approaching a wife or a stranger. I knelt beside her, my hands hovering above her shoulders, then finally resting there gently. "I don't know if love can be rebuilt from ashes," I whispered, my voice unsteady. "But I am willing to try, if you are willing to let me." She lifted her face, her eyes red and tired, but no longer distant. "I don't know either," she said, her voice trembling. "But I want to try." In that fragile moment, as the night wrapped around us, we were not husband and wife as the world defined it. We were two broken souls, choosing, despite everything, to walk forward together. It was not a fairy tale ending, nor was it the blaze of passion the world imagines for a wedding night. It was something quieter, humbler, but perhaps stronger. The beginning of a love not born of possession or expectation, but of patience, sacrifice, and the courage to start again. And though I would never forget the shadow of the man she had loved, and though she would never forget the ache of what had been lost, we rose together from the courtyard floor, hand in hand, stepping not into a dream but into the hard, uncertain work of building something real. The stars above us burned quietly, and for the first time since our wedding, I felt not like a man who had lost, but like a man who had been given a chance, not to take love, but to earn it.